And this, the 10th and final episode of the season, is titled It's Been a Strange Ride. We open on Lenore's home, and out pours the last of the wine. Vampire stories often use red wine as a motif, with those who subside off of blood. How does their flavor remind anyone of blood? Because both are thick, dark red liquids, that's a visual parallel, not one of taste and or touch. Hector brings the last to a grieving Lenore. There seems to be nobody left to maintain the castle. King Isaac is mentioned, but no one else is seen. If you'd watched this on mute, you'd come away thinking these two were the only ones left in the entire nation of Styria. The conversation turns to the vampire's virtue, as Lenore calls it. Their longer lifespans mean they have to think longer into the future, enforcing a need for stability, rather than stumbling about as humans do. And Hector is skeptical that such a virtue can exist, let alone be a virtue. And so the conversation shifts to the difference between strength and power. The power Carmilla sought had a root in seeking that stability. So as Striga and Morana were sent off to conquer, they were literally being used as status quo warriors. Power without diplomacy. This former diplomat considers such to be a parasite that lays eggs inside you and needs to be fed. I've been following politics too much. That sounded way too familiar to me. Lenore shrinking into that chair reflects the cage that her home has become. Watching this, I was reminded of the still-by-still animation of USA Street Fighter cartoon. Although it's at least not as bad as those old animation cells they used. Their Masami Ubari Light style works much better for Capcom and SNK designs, but I'm not coming up with a Konami title that would benefit from it. This is a wrap-up episode. Standing around talking for most of it is a must, so the animation budget was better spent in the previous two episodes than would be here. But the detail on character and background is still at elite class, even by the end. All out of wine, she throws the glass away. She's done with this. Sensing what she's about to do, Hector makes a last-ditch effort to stop her. One more vampire romance on full display. I wonder what he's thinking. He belonged to her when he still had that finger, and right after he severed it, he's losing her too. Lenore steels herself for her pending fade to ashes. How is this process one of the least gory things in the show? No, I'm not making fun. And there's Hector alone now, at first lamenting, but then breathing in a brand new day. From brand new day on Castle of Sad to bright new day on Castle of Lad. Is that Trevor's grave or Lisa's? You see people carrying supplies past it and moving towards the castle. Alucard finally has help clearing out the mess he's been working on. Graves have been set aside for the lost, and good use is being made of the library. Greta and Alucard have an adorable back and forth about whose plan this new village was before Sypha's presence interrupts them. Sypha confirms that she is very much pregnant, hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 weeks, and wants to finish the original plan she and Trevor made of rejoining the speaker caravan she came from at the beginning of the series. Alucard insists that she should stay, but she doesn't want to be solely reliant on him for the rest of her life. Boy, is she in for a shock. They agree that the child should have a community, and the community is what is being built by the survivors around them. No one is going back to Dynasty, although that's not the only place some of them hail from. Greta works her magic and points out a real chance to make life better for the next generation than it was for theirs, with schools, one of which is dedicated exclusively to the library. Given that the castle's right next to the old Belmont Hold, there's technically 2 libraries to study. Hearing this burgeoning place's namesake, Sypha would like to live in a place called Belmont. She sets down her bag and points out all of the changes needed if the village is to be made. Then they see that horse again, untied and on the approach. Imagine their surprise when they see it's a hooded Trevor riding it. In a private conversation with the judge last season, they mention how places catch up with you, even when you suspect to never see your old home again. He reflects on Saint Germain opening up the quarter just before he died, and waking up on the north bank of the Danube. His greatest fear through all this would be that his offspring would actually be called Trevor. And he's certainly still got some life in him for later. They've each got both eyes in their head, but love is blind after all. It's not just the Holy Cross that has a largely forgotten presence within their world and a long, strange, complicated history found within his mother's books. That dagger, separated into a bunch of good luck charms, is even weirder. Now Trevor notices so many people in his old home, but he's aghast to hear the new name is Truffy. I thought you were going to call it Belmont. Alucard, are you learning how to troll? As the boys discover how weirdly happy Alucard is, he drops the title of the episode. Bizarrely, each lead is smiling at the same time. Is Sypha right? Have they finally won? Jumping ahead to the third and final scene of the episode. The way the animation models are framed initially, this shot suggests the man in blue will be significant. But who are those 2 in the distance? Lisa and Vlad Tepes have somehow remained on Earth and wear stolen cloaks that match their respective hair. Who knows how they're paying for a room under that name without incident? As Dracula washes his face, I just realized I hadn't asked how reflections work in this series. And how did those features of his not stand out? Well, they reflect on generating his secret identity, their deaths, their confusing rebirth, marshalling various resources, their time in hell, and they agree to let their son have his closure. They're moving in another direction. They'll see him again someday. Seeking a goal and a place to go on that note, Dracula suggests London, naturally. But a coastal scene, out of the city, without much sunlight, very few people. I wonder if by this point in the narrative if it's the same as he remembers. They have a nice line that's telling about each of them, but will stick with me for a while. I'm not going to get better without you. And I was never going to be better without you. Well, this has been a heartwarming ending to this roller coaster of a series. I'm very content with where things ended up, but I would still like to see more in spin-offs. Editing this together has been a fun exercise for me. I liked looking into things and learning about a classic franchise for this. I never got to play much Castlevania as a kid. For instance, did anyone else miss the succubi? In Castlevania 3, that this takes so much from, the succubus takes on Lisa's form to taunt Alucard. I can only imagine how he or Drac would have responded to a stunt like that here. Well, tell me what you liked or would have preferred to see. Comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, help me with the algorithm. And if you want to see me apply this to anything else, please let me know.